What if the signs you've been chasing, the coincidences that feel too perfect to ignore, aren't coming from the universe at all? What if they're coming from you? Imagine for a moment that every synchronicity you've experienced, every strange alignment of events, is not random luck, not divine intervention, but your own hidden self, whispering to you in disguise. Think about it. You meet someone by chance, just when you needed their advice. You stumble across a book with the exact words that answer your question, or you dream of a symbol, and the next day, it shows up in real life. These moments feel magical, don't they? They feel like the universe is speaking directly to you. But what if the universe isn't outside? It's inside, using the world as a mirror. That's what we're exploring today. By the end of this video, you'll see synchronicity in a completely new way. You'll learn why these events seem to happen more when you're paying attention, why some people experience them often, while others never notice, and why each one carries a message you may have been missing. More importantly, you'll realize how much power you actually hold, because the synchronicities you see might be nothing less than your own inner wisdom wearing a mask. Carl Jung, the psychologist who gave us the word synchronicity, described it as meaningful coincidence, something beyond cause and effect. He told the story of a woman who dreamed of a golden scarab. As she shared it with him, a beetle of that very kind tapped at the window. Coincidence? Perhaps, but Jung saw something deeper. He believed that the psyche and the outer world are not separate. When they align, we experience synchronicity. Now here's the twist. Science may not agree. Skeptics argue that synchronicity is just pattern recognition, your brain connecting dots because it craves meaning. But research shows something fascinating. People who are more intuitive, more open to experience, report synchronicities far more often. It's not that the events themselves change, it's that awareness changes. Could it be that the moment you start noticing, your mind begins projecting meaning outward, shaping reality in return? This is where the idea becomes personal. Maybe synchronicity isn't a message from some distant cosmic force. Maybe it's you, your higher self, disguising itself as the world around you. Every chance meeting, every symbolic sign, every impossible alignment, these could be signals from your subconscious, guiding you back to what you already know, but haven't yet admitted. Why does this matter? Because if synchronicity is you in disguise, then you are never truly lost. The guidance you're searching for doesn't have to come from outside. It's already here, flowing through your thoughts, your choices, your awareness, creating reflections in the world that point you forward. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll begin to see synchronicity differently, not as a mystery outside your control, but as a hidden part of yourself, showing up in perfect timing. And once you see it this way, you'll never look at coincidence the same again. Before we talk about the idea that synchronicity could be you in disguise, let's first understand what synchronicity actually means. At its simplest, synchronicity is described as a meaningful coincidence, an event where two things line up in such a way that it feels significant, but without any clear cause and effect connecting them. It's not about one action directly producing another, like hitting a ball and watching it roll. Instead, it's about something from the inner world, your thoughts, dreams or emotions, matching up with something in the outer world, without a logical chain tying them together. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who first introduced the term, used synchronicity to explain those strange moments when life seems to orchestrate itself in perfect timing. He believed these events were not just accidents, but glimpses into a deeper order that connects the inner self with the external world. The difference between coincidence and synchronicity lies in meaning. A coincidence is just two random events happening together. Synchronicity is when that overlap strikes you in a personal way, when it feels as if life itself is speaking directly to you. One of Jung's most famous stories makes this clearer. A patient of his was sharing a dream she had the night before. In her dream, she saw a golden scarab, a type of beetle that held strong symbolic meaning in ancient cultures. As she told him this dream in his office, Jung heard a tapping sound at the window. He opened it, and a beetle flew in. Not just any beetle, but a scarab-like insect, one strikingly close to the golden scarab from her dream. He handed it to her, and said, "Here is your scarab." For Jung this was no ordinary coincidence, it was a perfect illustration of the concept he was trying to explain. The woman's inner experience, the dream, was mirrored by an external event, the beetle at the window. There was no logical reason for the timing. One did not cause the other, but the connection felt undeniable, carrying meaning that reached beyond probability. It shifted the atmosphere of the session, opening the patient to new insights she had resisted before. This story captures the essence of synchronicity, an alignment of the inner and outer worlds in a way that feels purposeful, even though no scientific explanation can tie the two together. What makes it powerful is not proof of cause, but the effect it has on the person experiencing it. Synchronicity is felt more than explained. It stirs something inside you, making you stop, reflect, and ask, what are the chances? Jung believed these moments were not random but connected to the psyche itself. He argued that the human mind is not fully separate from the outside world. Instead, there is a bridge, a kind of shared order that can reveal itself in these small but powerful flashes of meaning. Synchronicity is one of the ways this hidden connection becomes visible, and the golden scarab story remains a vivid reminder of how mysterious and deeply personal these events can be. Synchronicity becomes much easier to grasp when you think of it as a bridge between what happens inside you and what happens outside of you. It's not just about random chance, it's about the strange way your inner state, your thoughts, emotions, or dreams, seems to spill over into the world around you, arranging events in a way that feels meaningful. Instead of thinking of your mind and the outer world as two separate realms, synchronicity suggests they are connected by threads we don't normally see. Researchers writing in psychology and psychiatry journals describe synchronicity as a moment when internal conditions meet external occurrences without direct cause. For example, a paper published on the subject explains that awareness plays a key role. If you are in a reflective or heightened emotional state, you are more likely to notice patterns and meaning in the events around you. This doesn't necessarily mean the events happen because of you in a literal sense, but it does mean your mind becomes tuned in, like a radio catching a specific frequency. Psychologists also note that synchronicity often shows up during times of transition, when you are moving through uncertainty, making big decisions, or seeking answers. It's in those vulnerable moments that the connection between inner and outer feels strongest. For instance, if you are thinking deeply about whether to reconnect with an old friend, and then suddenly you bump into that exact person at the store, it shakes you. The timing feels too perfect, as if your inner longing pulled them into your path. This is the classic example of synchronicity in daily life. You think of someone and soon after you meet them unexpectedly. On the surface, skeptics might say this is just probability. After all, you know many people, and from time to time you're bound to run into someone you know. But the feeling is different when it happens precisely at the moment you're thinking about them, especially if your thoughts were emotionally charged. That sense of meaning is what turns the encounter into synchronicity rather than coincidence. Your inner state, your attention, your emotional energy, seems to align with the external event, making the world feel responsive. Writers in psychology today often highlight how synchronicities work as a feedback loop. The inner state sets the stage, the outer event reflects it, and the meaning you attach deepens the cycle. This is why such moments often feel like guidance or reassurance. It's as if life is mirroring back what you're already carrying within. When you're hopeful, you see signs that encourage you. When you're doubtful, you may notice synchronicities that challenge your doubts. In either case, the world becomes a mirror for the psyche, speaking in symbols and timing instead of words. This link between inner states and outer events suggests that synchronicity is less about breaking the laws of cause and effect and more about expanding how we understand connection. Instead of straight lines of logic, it invites us to see circles, patterns, and reflections that tie together the visible and the invisible. It's not proof in the scientific sense, but it is evidence in the personal sense, evidence that your mind and the world outside are not as separate as you once thought. From a scientific perspective, synchronicity often gets explained in much simpler terms. Skeptics argue that what we call meaningful coincidences are nothing more than the brain's natural tendency to search for patterns. Human beings are wired to make connections even when none exist. This is known as apophenia, the mind's ability to find shapes in clouds, hear hidden messages in noise, or link unrelated events into a story. Scientists suggest that synchronicity works in the same way. Two unrelated events happen, and because they overlap with your thoughts or emotions, your brain gives them meaning. Another scientific argument comes from probability. Given how many thoughts we have each day, and how many events unfold around us, it's statistically inevitable that some of them will match up. If you think of a friend you haven't spoken to in years and they call you the same day, it feels uncanny. But from a probability standpoint, the more people you know, the more chances exist for overlaps like this to happen. It's not mystical, skeptics say, it's just math. In fact, some discussions on online forums highlight how these so-called meaningful coincidences can be explained through sheer odds. With billions of people making billions of decisions daily, it's only natural that strange alignments occur. Skeptics also point out that memory plays a role. People tend to remember coincidences that feel special and forget the countless times when nothing unusual happens. This selective attention creates a bias. You might think, it always happens when I think of someone, but in reality there are many times when you think of people and don't hear from them at all. The brain filters experiences, holding on to the dramatic moments and discarding the ordinary ones, making synchronicity feel more common than it really is. But the spiritual view challenges this logic. From a spiritual perspective, synchronicity isn't just random chance, it's a form of guidance. Believers see it as evidence that the universe, or a higher intelligence, communicates through events and timing. A coincidence that carries deep meaning isn't dismissed as probability, it's embraced as a sign. Where science sees pattern-making, spirituality sees design. Where skeptics see odds, seekers see alignment. This spiritual perspective argues that the timing of events carries too much precision to be dismissed. Meeting the right person at the right time, receiving a symbol that matches your inner question, or witnessing repeated patterns during moments of crisis. These are interpreted as signals that you're being supported or directed toward a path. Instead of the brain projecting meaning onto the world, spirituality suggests that the world itself is alive with meaning, waiting for you to notice. The difference between these two perspectives lies in how one interprets experience. The scientific lens reduces synchronicity to psychology and probability, stripping away mystery. The spiritual lens elevates it, suggesting there's more happening than logic alone can explain. To skeptics, synchronicity is just your mind playing tricks. To believers, it's the universe leaving breadcrumbs, leading you toward growth, awareness, and connection. Both views exist side by side, and the choice of which to follow often depends on how open you are to seeing meaning beyond reason. One way researchers have tried to make sense of synchronicity is through what's called the Sam-Dunn model. This model, discussed in psychological studies, breaks synchronicity into three simple stages: receptiveness, event, and meaning detecting. It's a way to understand not just what synchronicity is, but how people experience it step by step, and why it can have such a powerful effect on their lives. The first stage is receptiveness. This is about being open, alert, and aware enough to notice the possibility of something unusual. If your mind is distracted or closed off, you may miss moments that could feel meaningful. But when you're receptive, when you're paying attention or in a reflective state, you're more likely to recognize that an event around you connects to your inner state. Receptiveness doesn't create synchronicity, but it creates the conditions where you can see it. In that sense, synchronicity is partly about perception. The same event could happen to two people, and one sees it as a sign while the other dismisses it entirely. The second stage is the event itself. This is the outer piece, the coincidence that seems to line up with your thoughts, dreams, or emotions. It could be hearing a song with lyrics that echo exactly what you've been feeling, running into someone you were just thinking about, or stumbling across a symbol that matches a recent dream. The event is neutral on its own, just something that happens in the external world. What gives it weight is how it intersects with the inner world at that precise moment. The third stage is meaning detecting. This is where synchronicity comes alive. Meaning detecting is the act of linking the inner and the outer, creating a sense of significance that transforms the event from coincidence into synchronicity. Without this stage, it's just random chance. With it, the experience becomes personal, charged with guidance or reassurance. Research highlights that this meaning-making process has a real psychological effect. People who find meaning in synchronicities often report feeling more connected, more supported, and more confident about their life direction. What makes the ensemble model important is that it shows synchronicity is not just about strange events, it's about the interaction between attention, experience, and interpretation. The event itself may be small, but when combined with receptiveness and meaning detecting, it can feel profound. Studies suggest that the ability to notice and interpret synchronicity is linked to higher well-being. It creates a sense of coherence, a belief that life is not random chaos but has threads of order running through it. This sense of connection can lower stress, boost resilience, and increase feelings of hope. The ensemble model also explains why synchronicity happens more often for some people than others. It isn't necessarily that more events occur in their lives. It's that they are more receptive and more willing to interpret experiences as meaningful. The model highlights that synchronicity is not only about what happens outside, it's also about how ready you are inside to see it. When you start to look at synchronicity through a different lens, it no longer feels like something distant or mysterious happening to you. Instead, it begins to resemble your own intuition, your inner wisdom, dressed up as coincidence. Think of it this way: your subconscious mind holds far more information than you're aware of in the present moment. It notices patterns, remembers details, and senses subtle shifts that your conscious mind often overlooks. When something you've been carrying deep inside lines up with an outer event, that alignment may be less about chance and more about your psyche nudging you forward in disguise. Imagine the times you've thought of a friend you hadn't spoken to in years, only to run into them later that week. Science might say, this is probability, but there's another way to see it. Perhaps your inner self knew you were ready for reconnection, and synchronicity became the vehicle for making it happen. The encounter feels external, but the push came from within. These events strike with meaning because they mirror the truths you've already been carrying, just waiting for the right moment to break the surface. Intuition often speaks in whispers, gut feelings, sudden hunches, quiet urges. But most of us are so caught up in noise and distraction that we ignore them. Synchronicity can act as intuition amplified, breaking through in ways you can't easily dismiss. It takes the form of outer events so that you'll finally pay attention. In that sense, it's not random at all. It's carefully timed communication between your conscious and unconscious, between the part of you that questions and the part that already knows. This is why synchronicities often feel like guidance. They show up when you're uncertain, when you're asking big questions, or when you're on the edge of change. Your inner wisdom already leans toward a direction, but instead of shouting it in words, it places mirrors in your path. The book you pick up at just the right time, the stranger who says something that answers your hidden question, the symbol that repeats until you can't ignore it. All of these can be seen as your psyche speaking in the language of coincidence. The reason they feel so personal is because they are personal. They come from your own depths, not from somewhere outside of you. They resonate because they belong to you. Synchronicity is your inner landscape projecting itself into your outer experience, creating echoes that lead you to notice what you've already sensed. It is less about being surprised by chance and more about being reminded of what you know but have not yet embraced. So the next time a coincidence strikes you, consider that it may not be life's random game at all. It may be your deeper self, slipping into disguise, arranging the timing and symbols that catch your attention.
Synchronicity, then, is not the world speaking to you. It is you, finally speaking to yourself. Not everyone experiences synchronicity in the same way. Research has shown that people differ widely in how often they notice meaningful coincidences, and this difference is linked to personality traits and levels of awareness. Some people report seeing synchronicity almost daily, while others claim they rarely encounter it at all. The events themselves may not actually be happening more for one person than another, but the perception and interpretation of those events make the difference. Studies published in psychology journals explain that openness plays a central role. Individuals who are more open to experience, those who are curious, imaginative, and willing to consider new possibilities, are more likely to notice connections between inner thoughts and outer events. They live with a wider lens, which means they pick up details that others might overlook. An open mind is like a radar, scanning for patterns and potential meaning. Without that openness, many coincidences slip by unnoticed, dismissed as irrelevant. Another factor is intuition. People who rely strongly on intuition rather than strict logic often find synchronicity more present in their lives. Intuition allows you to sense connections without needing immediate proof. It helps you trust that a moment of alignment carries significance even if you cannot explain why. When you combine intuition with openness, synchronicity becomes more visible because you are both receptive to possibility and willing to feel meaning rather than reduce everything to chance. Researchers also suggest that sensitivity to synchronicity can increase during certain life stages. For example, times of stress, transition, or searching for direction tend to heighten awareness. When you're in a state of uncertainty, you are naturally more alert to signals that might guide you. A chance meeting or a symbolic event stands out more strongly because you're looking for answers. Someone less open or less intuitive might experience the exact same event and quickly forget it, while a more receptive person interprets it as a powerful sign. This difference also ties into well-being. People who frequently notice synchronicity often report greater feelings of connection and purpose. It gives them a sense that life has a deeper order, that they are supported, and that the world is responsive to their inner states. This doesn't mean life becomes easier, but it does mean they interpret challenges and turning points with more meaning, which can improve resilience. On the other hand, individuals who dismiss these experiences entirely may feel more isolated, believing life unfolds only through randomness and chance. The fascinating part is that noticing synchronicity is not about inventing events that aren't there, it's about tuning into them. The same world is happening to everyone, but the lens you use changes what you see. An open, intuitive person walks through life with a heightened ability to spot patterns that speak to them, while others walk past those patterns without recognition. Synchronicity, then, is not only about what happens, it's about who is ready to notice it and what they allow it to mean. Carl Jung believed that synchronicity is not just about individual experiences but also about something much larger, something that connects us all. He called this deeper layer the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of symbols, archetypes and images that humanity carries across time and culture. According to Jung, synchronicity taps into this shared pool, which is why certain symbols or patterns appear not only in one person's life, but in stories, myths and spiritual traditions throughout the world. When synchronicity happens, it feels deeply personal because it touches your inner state, but it also resonates on a universal level, speaking through symbols that everyone, at some level, can recognize. These archetypes, like the hero, the shadow, the mother or the wise old man, show up in dreams, myths and cultural traditions across the globe. They are patterns of human experience that everyone shares, regardless of where they are born or what language they speak. Deepen. Synchronicity often involves these archetypes rising into consciousness through outer events. For example, encountering a repeated symbol like an owl might feel personal, as though it is guiding you to wisdom or clarity, but owls have represented wisdom in countless cultures. What you interpret as your private sign is also part of a universal pattern that humanity has always understood. This is why synchronicity often carries a sense of depth that ordinary coincidence does not. It does not feel random, because it taps into something timeless. You may notice a symbol that speaks to your exact situation, but it also stirs something deeper, as though humanity itself has left behind a blueprint of meaning. Jung saw this as evidence that the psyche and the universe are woven together in ways science cannot measure, with the collective unconscious acting as the thread. The beauty of this idea is that synchronicity becomes both intimate and expansive. It is intimate because it speaks to you directly, connecting to your inner questions, fears or hopes. But it is expansive because it reminds you that you are part of a larger whole, that the symbols speaking to you have spoken to countless others before. This dual quality explains why synchronicity feels so powerful. It's not just your story unfolding, it's the echo of it. What feels like a private message is also part of the shared language of the human soul. In psychology today, there's an account of someone who kept stumbling upon the Queen of Hearts card at the very moment they were weighing the decision to leave their steady job and go freelance. The first time, it might have looked like chance. The second time, maybe curiosity. But when the card kept showing up again and again, it began to feel like more than just a fluke. To that person, the Queen of Hearts came to symbolize courage, love for their craft, and the risk of following passion over security. It wasn't that the universe had magically placed cards in their path. Rather, the repeated appearance mirrored something stirring inside their inner calling, their deeper self, nudging them to take the leap. When synchronicity like this happens, it can be tempting to think of it as an external sign, as if the world is sending coded messages. But another perspective is that these symbols are the psyche's way of speaking to you in a language you cannot ignore. The Queen of Hearts wasn't random, it was the psyche externalizing a decision that was already being wrestled with internally. By noticing the card, the person gave shape to their own hidden desire, and the repetition amplified it until it became impossible to dismiss. This is how inner truth often surfaces, not as a logical argument but as a striking pattern that demands your attention. What's powerful here is how meaning is created. The Queen of Hearts card on its own means little. But when paired with the timing of a decision and the emotional charge of uncertainty, it becomes loaded with significance. Psychology shows us that the human mind is primed to notice patterns and assign meaning to them. But in moments of deep transition, these patterns are not trivial. They act as mirrors, helping people to clarify what they already feel but cannot yet articulate. The coincidence becomes less about fate and more about alignment between the inner world and the outer one. The fact that it was the Queen of Hearts and not some other card also mattered. Archetypally, the Queen of Hearts carries connotations of devotion, risk for love, emotional richness, and intuitive leadership. All qualities that resonate with the leap from safe employment into the uncertain but potentially fulfilling path of freelancing. In this sense, the symbol reflected the exact qualities the person needed to embody. This is what makes synchronicity feel so tailored. The outer event resonates with an inner theme that is already alive, giving it personal weight and direction. Seeing the card multiple times gave permission to trust what was already there. Instead of feeling reckless or unsupported, the person experienced a sense of affirmation. The card became a silent yes, not because magic placed it there, but because their mind recognized in it the courage they needed. The real power wasn't in the external coincidence but in the awakening of inner clarity. The Queen of Hearts was a reminder that the call to freedom was already written inside them, and the repeated encounter was simply the psyche's way of insisting they finally listen. So when you step back and look closely, synchronicity may not be some outside force dropping hints into your path. It may be you, your deeper self, your unspoken motives, your quiet truths, expressing themselves through the events around you. What looks like coincidence could be your own inner voice, wearing a cloak of chance, calling you to pay attention. The world becomes a mirror, reflecting what you already carry inside. If this message spoke to you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. There's more waiting for you, and your journey is just beginning.